When I bought my new home, I wasn't just purchasing property. I was buying into a dream I'd saved for nearly a decade. After years of renting cramped apartments, budgeting every dollar, and saying next year to vacations and luxuries, I'd finally closed on a house with space, peace, and most importantly, my own private pool. It wasn't Olympic-sized or fancy, but it wrapped around the back of the house in a perfect L shape, flanked by tall hedges and a wide concrete deck. It was mine. There were no pool hours, no screaming kids that weren't mine, no resident ID required signs. I floated there the night I moved in, staring up at the stars, thinking, this is the life. For a solid week, it felt like paradise. Then came Karen. I met her during a weekend when I was hosting a quiet cookout with two friends. Just burgers, sodas, some music playing softly through my Bluetooth speaker. We were sitting poolside, feet dipped, when a sharp voice rang out from the side gate. "Excuse me, who authorized this usage?" I turned confused. A woman in her 50s stood with a clipboard and a scowl so sharp it could have sliced bricks. "You're trespassing," she added. "This pool is reserved for HOA members only." I blinked. "I live here," she scoffed. "That pool is part of the shared recreational space. It's not for private parties. You need HOA approval." At first, I genuinely thought she'd made a mistake. I offered to show her my deed, my property line, anything she needed. She refused. Instead, she took a photo of us, with flash, and stormed off, muttering about fines and protocols. My friends laughed it off, joking that I'd just been Karened. But 2 days later, an envelope appeared in my mailbox. Inside was a violation notice for unauthorized private use of community pool facilities and a $250 fine. The letter was signed by the HOA Vice President, Karen L. Whitman. Now, I should have been furious, but honestly, I was baffled. My real estate agent had specifically stated the pool was part of the lot I'd purchased. I pulled out the documents. Yep, clearly marked. I even had an aerial view from the sale listing, showing the pool fully enclosed by the property's original fencing. It was mine. All mine. So why was Karen pretending it wasn't? I attended the next HOA meeting, paperwork in hand, expecting to resolve things civilly. I was wrong. The moment I entered the clubhouse, I felt the chill. Karen was seated at the head table like a courtroom judge, surrounded by a few other board members who looked equally miserable to be there. "Let's address item number 3, she said, flipping through her binder. "Unauthorized pool use by Lot 17B. I stood calmly holding up my deed. "That's my pool. It's included in my property. There must be a mistake." She cut me off. "We've had shared access to that pool for over a decade. The previous owner allowed the community to use it under our bylaws." I nodded. "Sure, but I'm not the previous owner, and it's legally mine. Here's the title, the survey map, and confirmation from the county assessor." I passed them over. She didn't even glance at them. "We'll need to review this with our attorney," she said. "In the meantime, the fine stands, and you're prohibited from using the pool until the matter is resolved." The room went quiet. I should have left it alone. Should have let the lawyers handle it quietly. But something about her tone, the entitlement, the absolute refusal to acknowledge facts, set a fire under me. This wasn't just a mistake. It was Karen trying to maintain power over something that had never belonged to her in the first place. I looked her dead in the eyes and said, "You're not getting access to my pool. Not now, not ever." She stared back, tight-lipped. And that's when I knew. This wasn't going to be resolved over documents. It was war. And Karen had just cannonballed into the deep end. After that HOA meeting, I thought Karen might simmer down once the reality of property law sank in. Maybe she'd realize her overstep, apologize for the fine, and slink back into whatever sanctimonious hole she crawled out of. But no, Karen didn't retreat. She escalated. It was like watching someone double down on a losing hand in poker, except instead of losing chips, she was torching her credibility and dragging the HOA down with her. The morning after our standoff, I found a new letter taped, yes, taped, to my front door. Second notice: pool access remains suspended pending HOA resolution. Continued use will incur daily fines. In red ink, it read, $150 per day until compliance. Below that, her signature, large and self-important, almost like a brand, Karen L. Whitman, Vice President, Willow Glen HOA. I called the number on the letter. Voicemail. I emailed the board. No reply. I left a message for the HOA's official legal contact. Nothing. But later that week, I got a knock on the door from a man in khakis and a green polo. "I'm here to inspect the shared recreational facility," he said. I blinked. "You mean my pool?" He looked embarrassed. "I was just asked to confirm fencing height and whether it was locked." I let him out back, gave him the grand tour, and handed him a copy of my deed. "If Karen's paying you, you might want to triple your rate," I said. He laughed nervously and left without taking a single note. That night, I went digging. I pulled every page from my closing packet, contacted my real estate agent, even called the city planning office. I wanted something airtight, something that wouldn't just defend my pool, but end this madness altogether. And that's when I found it. Buried in the appendix of the HOA's original charter, digitized and very poorly scanned on their website, was a clause labeled 3.4b, Voluntary Shared Use Agreements. The key word, voluntary. It stated that any privately owned amenity, pool, tennis court, whatever, could be used by the community only with the express, written consent of the property owner, and that said consent could be revoked at any time. There was no consent form signed by me. In fact, the previous owner had signed one 20 years ago and revoked it 5 years before selling the property, meaning the HOA hadn't had legal access to that pool in over half a decade. I printed everything. Next, I contacted a real estate attorney. She was brilliant, blunt, and absolutely thrilled by the absurdity of the case. "They're fining you for using your own pool?" she asked. "Oh, honey, this is going to be fun." Within a week, she drafted a cease and desist letter addressed directly to Karen and the HOA, demanding an immediate end to all attempts to regulate access, removal of all imposed fines, and a formal apology, or we'd be pursuing legal action under state property statutes. We sent it certified, return receipt. That receipt came back signed. But Karen wasn't done. She hosted another HOA meeting, this time under the title, Emergency Session, Water Equity and Fair Use. I showed up, documents in hand, and sat quietly in the back. She stood at the front like she was addressing the UN. "Water is a shared resource," she said. "It's unethical for one property owner to monopolize it, especially when the previous owner allowed community access." Someone raised a hand. "But it's on his deed, right?" Karen smiled thinly. "The deed is only part of the story. Community precedent matters. This is about fairness." That's when I stood up. "I'm sorry, Karen, but if you want to talk precedent, we can start with HOA Charter Section 3.4b. I passed out copies. This isn't just a gray area. The previous owner revoked shared access 5 years ago, and there is no current agreement, which means your fines, your inspectors, your threats, all illegal. Karen flushed red. "You don't understand how this neighborhood works," she snapped. "We value shared benefit," I smiled. "Then build your own pool." The room broke into murmurs. One man clapped. Just once. It was the loudest sound in the room. The next morning, Karen retaliated. She left another violation notice, this time accusing me of excessive water use and environmental noncompliance. According to her, the pool, my pool, violated neighborhood water neutrality standards. There was no such clause in the bylaws. I checked 3 times, but it didn't matter. She wasn't trying to win legally anymore. She was trying to grind me down with paperwork, threats, and exhaustion. But she'd underestimated me. I called my lawyer. "I'm done playing defense," I said. "Let's go on offense." She grinned. "About time." That same day, I went to Home Depot, bought the thickest commercial-grade chain and lock I could find, and attached it to the inside gate of the pool area. I installed a privacy screen around the fencing, and then I posted a laminated sign outside my gate that read, "Private property, pool access revoked, trespassers will be prosecuted. HOA membership does not grant entry." I took a picture and sent it to the HOA email list. Then I added, You want to find me? You'll need scuba gear and a warrant. After I locked the gate and posted that sign, I expected backlash, but I didn't expect the silence. For the first time since this whole ridiculous pool saga started, Karen didn't respond immediately. No fresh notices, no staged wellness inspections, no HOA mass emails, nothing. It was as if someone had unplugged the power to her clipboard. Of course, I wasn't naive. I knew she wasn't gone. Karen wasn't the type to retreat. She was the type to plot. But I had time now and I used it wisely. My lawyer and I began compiling a file so comprehensive, so irrefutable, that even the HOA's most loyal rule sticklers would have to sit down and shut up. First, we formalized the pool boundary with a certified property survey. Not a vague sketch, but a city-stamped, GPS-verified plat map that outlined every inch of my lot, clearly marking the pool, deck, and fencing as enclosed private property. We included the original revocation document signed by the previous owner, time-stamped with witness signatures. Then came the correspondence archive. Every email from Karen, every notice, every voicemail she left that started with, "I don't want to be the bad guy," but, and ended with some form of passive-aggressive nonsense. My favorite was one where she called my pool a visual disturbance that erodes neighborhood serenity. We even had drone photos, courtesy of a friend with a drone hobby, showing exactly how the pool was separated from common areas. My lawyer packaged all of it into a glossy 80-page document titled Legal Response to Willow Glen HOA, Private Pool Enforcement Rebuttal. Inside was everything: property law, civil code, ADA compliance confirmations, and my personal touch, screenshots of the Zillow listing that advertised the pool as a fully private amenity. The irony? The photos were taken during Karen's tenure as vice president, meaning she herself had approved the listing language when the house was for sale. The cherry on top? A notarized statement from the original builder who had handwritten plans confirming that the pool was constructed as a custom, residential-only feature back in 1993. Karen wasn't even living in the neighborhood back then. She was probably still terrorizing cashiers at a Hobby Lobby. Once the document was complete, we submitted it to the HOA board, not through Karen, but directly to the HOA's legal counsel, the City Housing Committee, and the local civic mediator. We CC'd the HOA email list. My lawyer included a short, polite summary at the front. We respectfully request that all fines be removed, all enforcement attempts cease immediately, and that no further communication regarding the pool be made by any representative of the HOA. Continued attempts may constitute harassment under state law. Then I waited. Karen didn't. 3 days later, she called the county water board and filed a report claiming I was unlawfully diverting water for personal recreation during a regional drought. I only found out because a bewildered water official knocked on my door with a clipboard and said, "I'm sorry, but someone filed an anonymous tip that you're operating a private water park?" A water park. I nearly choked. I invited him in, showed him the pool pump, my low flow settings, my water bill, lower than the neighborhood average, and, just to twist the knife, my gray water recycling system. He apologized profusely. "This is nonsense," he said. "We get these calls sometimes. Usually it's an angry neighbor with too much free time." I nodded. "Say no more." I updated the sign on my gate. Now it read, "Private property, pool access revoked. Trespassers will be prosecuted. Excessive complaining will be laughed at." And then, just for fun, I added a fake "pool closed due to Karen" sign below it. It spread fast. A neighbor snapped a photo and posted it in our community Facebook group. Caption, "Finally someone said it." The post got 117 likes and a stream of comments ranging from, "I knew it was her," to "Can we make this into a t-shirt?" Even the quiet neighbors, the ones who normally avoided drama, began to engage. They shared stories. Turns out Karen had tried to find someone for overly enthusiastic wind chimes and another for unapproved lawn flamingos. People were done. Karen responded in the only way she knew how: badly. She held a HOA compliance walkthrough, an unofficial, unsanctioned inspection where she went door to door with a notebook and tried to intimidate people into revealing who had supported me. She wore a high-visibility vest, which was somehow more blinding than her attitude, carried a measuring tape, and loudly complained about rebellion spreading through the community. Someone filmed her ranting outside my fence. She called my ramp a crime against design and tried to reach through the gate to take another picture. That video hit Facebook in under an hour with the caption, "Karen tries to breach the pool gate of truth. Denied." The HOA board finally had enough. I received an email from two remaining members, separate from Karen, apologizing. They admitted they were deeply embarrassed by the behavior of the vice president and that they were reviewing internal leadership processes. Translation: she was on thin ice. But I wasn't done. I hired a welder to reinforce the gate. He installed a custom steel bar across the inside, double-bolted, powder-coated, and impossible to cut without industrial tools. It looked like a vault door from a spy movie. I added motion lights, security cameras, even a keypad entry system for myself. This wasn't a pool anymore. It was a statement. Karen tried to control what wasn't hers. Now she couldn't even see it without triggering a motion alarm. And the best part? The legal clock was ticking. Because if she thought locking the gate was the end, she had no idea what kind of splash was coming next. Karen should have quit while she was behind. After I reinforced the gate and posted the infamous "pool closed due to Karen" sign, most people would have licked their wounds and slithered away in shame. Not Karen. Her ego was like a cracked garden gnome, tacky, weather damaged, and impossible to get rid of. Rather than admit defeat, she did what all great suburban tyrants do. She tried to turn my private pool situation into a full-blown neighborhood crusade. She started by organizing a town hall meeting, not an HOA meeting, a community forum held in the clubhouse titled "Restoring Order, Reclaiming Shared Resources" in Willow Glen. The flyers were printed in full color with phrases like "unauthorized private locking of communal spaces" and "reclaiming our neighborhood dignity." She plastered them on mailboxes, taped them to lampposts, and hand-delivered them door to door. The one she gave me was folded in half and shoved under my welcome mat like a passive-aggressive grenade. I posted it on my fridge like a trophy. I didn't attend her meeting, but I heard about it from no fewer than 10 neighbors afterward. Apparently, it was less of a town hall and more of a live meltdown. Karen brought a whiteboard, a stack of violation forms, and what she called evidence folders. She stood at the front like she was defending a doctoral thesis, clicking through a PowerPoint titled "The Pool Crisis: One Man's Rebellion Against Structure." She accused me of subverting the HOA, inciting neighborhood division, and erecting a hostile fortress around recreational space. One neighbor asked, "Didn't he just lock his own pool gate?" She snapped, "It's not about the gate, it's about the principle." Someone else apparently asked, "Oh, Karen, have you actually read the deed?" She responded by accusing them of collusion. The meeting lasted 42 minutes. 31 of them were just Karen talking. 8 people walked out. 3 people live-streamed it, and 1 posted a compilation on TikTok set to dramatic courtroom music. The video got over 400,000 views. The top comment, "When your HOA VP forgets the pool isn't hers and stages a coup against a guy with a fence and receipts." After that, things escalated quickly, but not in Karen's favor. Neighbors who had stayed silent during the early chaos started speaking up. Greg, the quiet guy 2 doors down, knocked on my door with a 6-pack and said, "I've had 3 warning letters in 2 years because of my mailbox color. I'm done pretending she's reasonable." Another neighbor, Tasha, revealed that Karen had reported her teen daughter's lemonade stand for unauthorized vending. One couple said Karen once measured the height of their backyard hedge with a yardstick while muttering about visibility codes. I knew we'd hit a tipping point when people started modifying their properties just to spite her. One house replaced their mailbox with a giant pink flamingo. Another family installed a blow-up unicorn pool float on their lawn with a sign that read, "Karen says no fun allowed. We disagree." Someone even photoshopped Karen's face onto a "No lifeguard on duty" warning sign and stuck it on my gate. Karen didn't take this well. She sent an HOA-wide email accusing a growing contingent of residents of creating a culture of insubordination. She said we were weaponizing humor and glorifying disrespect. The email ended with a demand that I immediately remove the hostile signage and reinstate community access to the disputed aquatic facility. My lawyer responded with one sentence: cease contact with our client immediately or prepare to defend your actions in court. That didn't stop Karen. She filed a new complaint, this time claiming that my pool represented an attractive nuisance and that by locking it, I had created a safety hazard for curious minors. Never mind that it was fully fenced, locked, and monitored with cameras. Never mind that it had always been private property. This was Karen's Hail Mary, and it landed like a wet sponge. Then came the mailers. Yes, she actually spent money printing a 4-page newsletter titled The Willow Glen Watchdog, where she outlined the pool problem in grave detail. She quoted herself as acting community defender, included blurry photos of my locked gate, and ended the piece with a dramatic appeal. Will we be a neighborhood that shares or one that fences itself in fear? I framed that too, right next to the violation letter from month 1. But the real turning point came when the HOA president, finally fed up, called an official emergency session without Karen. He posted a public agenda titled Leadership Review and Policy Oversight Audit. I attended, as did nearly every homeowner on our street. When Karen tried to enter, the president stood up and said, "Karen, we're conducting this review in your absence due to recent legal action and community complaints. Please leave." She protested loudly. Someone in the back shouted, "Hey Karen, pool's closed!" She stormed out. The room erupted into applause. That night, the HOA formally suspended all of Karen's enforcement authority. They issued an apology letter to me, rescinded all past fines, and voted to remove her as vice president pending a final hearing. My lawyer sent me a bottle of wine with a note. "Congratulations, you just dethroned the HOA queen." And as I sat by the pool that evening, lights shimmering on the surface, the reinforced gate locked and quiet behind me, I realized something. Karen hadn't just lost a fight over a pool. She'd started a rebellion and accidentally built a community in the process. Once the dust from Karen's HOA suspension settled, it was time for a celebration. Not a smug victory lap, not a petty "told you so," but a genuine, joyous, long overdue release of the tension Karen had spent months pumping into our lives like a leaky gas line. So I did what anyone with a now gloriously private pool, a legally protected fence, and a newly empowered community would do. I threw a party, but not just any party, a party with an invitation list titled Everyone But Karen. It wasn't printed, of course, but the message was clear. I called it the Reclamation Pool Bash, and I made sure it was legal, local, and loud. Flyers went out to every neighbor. A food truck I'd befriended during the whole debacle agreed to park in my driveway and serve tacos and sliders all night. My buddy who DJs weddings brought his full setup, complete with LED uplighting and a sound system that could drown out even Karen's screechiest complaints. I hired 2 lifeguards, not because we needed them, but because optics matter, and I knew the HOA would be watching. And yes, I made sure permits were filed, occupancy laws followed, and noise restrictions respected. This wasn't just a party, it was airtight. The RSVPs rolled in faster than I expected. Families that had barely waved before were asking if they could bring cousins. Retired couples offered to bring folding chairs and cupcakes. One guy showed up early just to help set up lights. Turns out he'd been on the receiving end of one of Karen's legendary "You mow diagonally, not vertically" lectures. People were ready. The night of the party, the entire street lit up. String lights crisscrossed above the yard. My friend parked his restored vintage van as a backdrop for selfies, and someone brought a speaker with auto-tuned bark effects in honor of Karen's favorite HOA violation: dogs. By 6 p.m., my backyard looked like a music video for neighborhood unity. Kyle even showed up from across town to join the fun. He rolled up wearing a Hawaiian shirt, sunglasses, and a floaty around his neck. "Heard there was a war here," he joked. "Looks like we won." The pool glowed under multicolored lights. Laughter echoed down the street. Kids ran around with glow sticks. Old neighbors danced like they were 25 again. And me? I stood at the grill, flipping burgers with a drink in my hand, watching everything unfold with a quiet pride that no HOA fine could ever touch. Then because, of course, Karen showed up. She didn't walk in. She hovered. She parked her beige sedan across the street and stood on the sidewalk with a clipboard in one hand and a phone in the other, dressed like she was attending a funeral for common sense. You could see the fury on her face. How dare these people enjoy themselves? How dare they celebrate a pool she no longer controlled? Someone pointed her out, and a ripple of tension went through the yard. People whispered. A few turned to look. Someone took a photo. I didn't panic. I smiled. She walked halfway up my driveway and shouted, "This is still subject to HOA jurisdiction." The music didn't stop. Neither did the laughter. She kept yelling, trying to outvolume the DJ, but it was like watching a person rage underwater, completely muted by joy. I stepped forward calmly. "Karen," I said, "you're trespassing." She sneered. "I'm documenting this for legal review." I pointed to the security camera on the roof. Perfect. Say cheese. And then came the moment. One of the local news crews, yes, news crews, had been tipped off about the party. They'd reached out days earlier after covering our legal win, asking if they could do a follow-up story. I hadn't told anyone they were coming. And right then, at the peak of Karen's sidewalk meltdown, they pulled up in a van, stepped out with cameras rolling, and said, "Is this the party that ended in HOA reign?" I shrugged. It might be. Karen turned to see the cameras. She froze like a deer in stadium lights. Then, without another word, she bolted. Not a jog, a full retreat. One flip-flop flew off. Her clipboard hit the ground. The entire crowd erupted into cheers and applause. Someone started chanting, "Pool! Pool! Pool!" It caught on like wildfire. It was petty. It was perfect. The news crew interviewed a few neighbors. Greg called it the best HOA meeting we've never had. Tasha said Karen tried to divide us. Turns out she just gave us a reason to meet each other. The segment aired that night. From Fine to Freedom, how one man's pool changed a community. The clip of Karen's retreat made the blooper reel on late-night TV. One host called it the fastest a Karen's ever moved near chlorinated water. After the news van left, the party kept going. We played music, danced, and toasted to better days. Someone brought out a sheet cake that read, "Property of not Karen." Kyle gave a short speech. To pools, to peace, and to neighbors who finally met each other. Thanks to a war nobody asked for. We all raised our cups. And me? I sat back in my lounge chair, toes in the water, watching the ripple effect of resistance become something bigger than I ever expected. This wasn't just a party, it was a reset. And Karen's HOA, it was officially dead in the water. In the days after the now infamous pool party, you could feel the shift in Willow Glen. There was a lightness in the air that hadn't been there since the day Karen first descended from her beige SUV with a clipboard and a superiority complex. For the first time in months, people waved at each other on their morning walks. Kids played in front yards without parents, glancing nervously over their shoulders. Someone put up Halloween decorations a whole month early, and no one complained. It was like the entire neighborhood had been holding its breath, and finally exhaled. Karen was nowhere to be seen. Rumors swirled. Some said she'd taken a personal leave from the board. Others said she was hiding out at her daughter's house in Arizona until the news coverage died down. One guy claimed she'd gone on a silent retreat to reset her spiritual energy. But I found that hard to believe considering her aura always felt like burnt toast. Whatever the truth, one thing was certain. She was gone. 2 weeks later, her house went up for sale. No open house, no personal notes. Just a cold real estate sign with a phone number and the words, "Motivated Seller." I didn't go snooping, but I did notice that several garden gnomes had mysteriously appeared on her lawn overnight, each one holding a laminated sign that read, "Pool Not Included." No one admitted to it, but I had my suspicions. Greg can't keep a straight face for anything. The HOA board officially voted to dissolve itself shortly after. The final straw came when they received a letter from the city citing multiple complaints, procedural violations, and public misrepresentation of HOA authority. One paragraph specifically referenced attempts to control private amenities through fabricated citations. That's legalese for Karen lied, and now we're done. What remained of the board issued a final notice. Effective immediately, the Willow Glen HOA is suspended indefinitely. No further dues will be collected. All prior violations are null. Residents are encouraged to form a voluntary neighborhood council if desired. No one formed one. Instead, something better emerged. The community started working together organically. People took turns mowing the shared green strip. Teenagers organized a trash pickup event. Someone set up a neighborhood text chain, not a policing tool, but a support network. When Greg's wife had surgery, 5 people brought them casseroles. When Tasha's fence needed repainting, the neighbors pitched in. We didn't need rules. We just needed respect. Meanwhile, I made some upgrades. With no HOA in place to stop me, I painted the pool gate a deep navy blue and installed a sleek brass plaque right next to the keypad. It read, "Private property, pool access granted by invite only, in memory of HOA nonsense, 2023 to 2023. Below it, smaller text read, "No Karen access, ever dot." The reaction was immediate. People loved it. One neighbor asked if I'd mind if she got a matching sign for her porch. I told her I'd send her the template. The next week, she put up a sign above her porch swing that read, "This seat is Karen-free." And just like that, the legend spread. Karen-free zone stickers popped up on mailboxes. Someone made shirts. The same TikToker who documented the earlier meltdown returned to do a "Where are they now" video, and it hit 1 million views in 24 hours. But the best part, Kyle came to visit again, and this time he brought a friend. They sat by the pool for hours while we grilled, joked, and watched the sunset. At one point, his friend asked him, "Is this the pool?" He nodded, leaned back, and said, "This is the one we almost lost to a war on common sense." I asked if he wanted to swim. He smiled, kicked off his sandals, and said, "Hell yeah." So we did. We swam, we laughed, and we lived. Karen never returned. Her house sold to a young couple who'd seen the story online and thought, "That's the neighborhood we want." They installed solar panels, hosted a welcome party, and joined our group chat with a single message. "We brought snacks. We also hate HOAs." Perfect fit. And me, I got my life back, my peace, my pool. No more threats, no more fines, just sunlight on water, laughter echoing off concrete, and the knowledge that when you stand your ground, with facts, with community, and sometimes with just enough petty energy to print a laminated sign, you can win. Karen thought she owned the rules. Now she owns a footnote in my story. And that pool, it still sparkles.